welcome to More Christ. I'm Marcus. Today I'm joined by Jason Smyth. Jason is one of the greatest para athletes of all time. The Derry-born sprinter has the distinction of never having tasted defeat in a major Paralympic para athletics event since his debut at the 2005 European Championships in Finland. Just recently retired, as I was saying before we started recording this kind of funny term. Jason has represented Ireland at several Paralympic Games, winning gold each time. That includes winning the 100 meters and the 200 meters categories, and he's a world record holder in both those events. And Jason has competed in the T13 category for athletes that have a visual impairment. Just to begin, then, Jason, what inspired your love of athletics in the first place, and how did you get involved in this life?
Yeah, well, firstly, it's good to be here and thanks for having me. And to start, actually, I wouldn't say it was my love of athletics at all, ironically. It was a school teacher. So I went to secondary school up at Limavady. I went to Limavady Grammar. And fourth year, we did PE as part of GCSE. And the process was we did 4 or 5 events. You did them, you got testing on them, and then you came back 8, 12 weeks later and you seen some improvement. And the school teacher, a lady by the name of Liz McGuire, kind of off the back of that, she herself was involved in athletics and interested in athletics, said to me, would I have any interest in going to an athletics club? She thought she's seen something. Obviously, she thought I could be quite good, and from there, actually, I had no real interest in going, to be honest. I love football, played a bit of rugby, just kind of the main sports people would do, and I think probably being polite, didn't want to say no, and said if you come back to me with the information, sure, I'll go along and I'll see. And secretly kind of hoping she wouldn't come back with any information and she would just forget and go about her day and her week. And but she did come back, and then obviously I had to keep my side of the deal, and I went down to an athletics club with it was City of Derry, and it was actually the night I went down there. The guy who coached me, Steve McGuire, for a huge part of my career, was on the other side of the track with a sprints group, and I was sent over to him, and that's kind of where my start in athletics really came from. So yeah, just to be honest, looking at it, I feel probably one of the biggest lessons learning back on it is this piece around opportunities. Like in that one moment, it seemed irrelevant if I had decided to go or not go to athletics. Who really, like, does it really matter? And the answer you would say is no. But it's incredible now in hindsight. Obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing, to look back and see how pivotal that one moment was. And I think it always makes me wonder how many of those moments do we come across that we say no to, but just no idea what they may have had in store for us.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Jason. And aside from Mrs. McGuire that you mentioned there, are there any other figures, say even personal or historical, for example, who've been especially inspirational or influential in your life, and wonder how they might have affected you?
I would say the obviously the school teacher. I would say in a sporting context, my parents. I mean, the reality is, obviously now as a parent, you more appreciation and understanding, but you have a massive impact on your children, and just some of the foundations that is put in place. And I think for me, what went on to be a successful career was a lot built on some of those foundations that was set by my parents. Just even very simply in being in athletics, it was always you go do it and you do it well, and you know you don't kind of you're going to commit to something, you do it. And just little pieces like that. The other one, as I said, would have been my coach, Stephen McGuire. Nothing to Liz McGuire, even though they have the same surname, but he was probably the most influential person on the track that got me to the level I was at, and the things that I learned and the environments I was able to be around. So I would say they were probably the three most influential buckets of people.
Excellent. And I suppose if you're happy to speak about it, not many people might know about your missionary background. I wonder how you came to know Christ and how that has impacted how you've viewed your life in athletics and beyond.
Yeah. So I go to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I grew up. I suppose I grew up at being an important part of my life. When I look back, my granda would have been the the person in our family who made that move, probably away from just I assume he was a Protestant. I can't remember, but let's really found his faith in the move to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And for me, it just was probably a normal part of life growing up. But when I reflect on it, and reflect on what it gives me, I think there's probably a number of different angles. I think probably one of the biggest pieces is purpose, and from that, when you get a clear understanding of who you are, what you're here, your purpose of life, where you're trying to go, I think that right off the bat gives you more direction and purpose in what you're doing. I think knowing that I've been blessed by a talent, or blessed to have a talent, I think has also kept me humble in the journey that I've had. That it's not just me. There is more than me in life. There's a greater being, whatever way people want to put it, a God. There's Jesus Christ. There's that have blessed me with the abilities I have. Yes, I still have to make the choices to push those to their limits and maximize my potential, but you're blessed with something. So I think there's a piece around that that's continued to help me want to strive to be better, but knowing that there's something greater than me that I need to rely on. Another piece I would say is just about challenges. I mean, the reality is life is about overcoming challenges. It's one thing that we're guaranteed that we all face. They just look different. And I suppose knowing that I have someone else to rely on that knows me, understands me, can help and support me, that greater being, whatever people want to put it, as a God, or I think allows me to deal with the situations differently. It's all about how you look at life and the perspective of life, and shifting your mindset. And it's really taught me to, like, challenges are the only way we grow and develop. And therefore, if you look at challenges as opportunities, seeing how you can be shaped and molded into a greater version of yourself, then it really does shift how you deal with life. So I think for me, a lot of those pieces, yes, again, as a member of the church, I'd say our lifestyles probably a bit more aligned with being an athlete. We don't drink, we don't smoke, like it's probably a bit more around how do I keep my body clean and pure. It's something we've been blessed with, and it's again a responsibility of mine to keep it and look after it. So I think a lot of those different angles really have shaped me. And actually, it's been a huge part, and it's probably a part that people are less aware of, is it's been a huge part in what I feel that I've been able to have the right mindset and attitude that's allowed me to be successful. And probably the real trick is the successfulness over a long period of time, and that requires consistency and those right and good choices on a daily basis.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Jason. And I think that ties us into my next question quite nicely, actually. So, rather than making your career an ego project, so to speak, as it might be tempting to do if you don't have that context and you don't see it in terms of service and working for God or partaking in that community and so on. How does it feel to then reflect on the achievements that you have made and the impact that those have had on the Paralympic movement now that you've retired, as I say?
I think it's actually, to be fair, only in retirement that you kind of stop and reflect a little bit more than what you would ever do, because as an athlete, it's always about what's next and what's the next competition and what's the next games, and you're always very um again, it's about what you can control. You can't control what's happened in the past. You can only control what you do today and tomorrow, and that's very much where your thought is. But yeah, I think really this last couple of months have been able to. I probably haven't taken as much time to stop and reflect as maybe I should. Maybe I've been straight into the action in other places, but I think it's really allowed me to appreciate even more how incredible the journey I had was. To go 18 years and never be beaten feels something that won't be done again. And
Mm,
I mean, I haven't been one for going looking for, let's say, the impact I have specifically had. But where I look where the sport has moved in my time, um, it's made huge leaps forward. And yes, there's so many different pieces of that jigsaw that make that happen. It's not just one or a group of individuals, but it also required individuals being that successful that gave it the platform to be able to share that message. So I think really, when I do talk to previous or current athletes, I know a lot of them looked at the successes um, that myself and some other athletes has as that real inspiration. And I think that's for me one of the most powerful pieces around the whole para movement. And yes, it's very easy to say it can give people with disabilities a belief in themselves and aspire to be like some of these other athletes. But again, back to my point is what a para athlete is somebody who has a challenge, and often just it becomes a bit more, well, you can see it that maybe is a wee bit more obvious, and it's just about overcoming that to be successful. And people's success and people's potential are different. Mine's is different than yours. For some that may be gold medals, and for others that it's not. But it's how do we maximize that potential? I think the para movement just really is a huge piece on. That's what we all need to look at, is how do we overcome the challenges in front of us to do it successfully. So I think it has had a huge impact, and hopefully it can continue to have a big impact in society, and even the shift of people's mindsets around disabilities and inclusion. Like, that's become a big piece in society right now as well.
excellent. Thank you, Jason. And I suppose to maybe look at some specifics throughout your career, are there any particular moments or victories, say, that stand out as especially meaningful or memorable that you'd like to tell us about?
For me, the again, probably the two, for very different reasons. London 2012, the Paralympic Games as a whole experience was unbelievable. One, can you ever really put it into words? No. It's one of those things you kind of have to live and experience and be part of. But for anybody who does remember, just the whole build up to London 2012 was incredible, because it was a home games. The hype, the atmosphere, it was so close to home. Basically, meant all family and friends were able to head over to London. I would say it was real shift in the para movement and how it was attended and supported. And actually, the media did an incredible job in that piece around it was around people's abilities rather than disabilities. My performances, that was actually where I ran the world record. So like the whole games, just as an atmosphere, as an environment, was just for me unbelievable. As a race, it was 2021 at the Tokyo Paralympic Games, and very, very different situation. Obviously, we had, as everybody well remembers, the COVID times where we had lockdowns and the games was pushed back a year. But for me, the big piece was I picked up a pretty big back injury about a year before the games, and it was something that was ongoing, kind of settled a little bit and then came back worse, settled a little bit, came back worse, probably through to the end of 2020. And like a lot of times when we face pretty big challenges, I look back at those moments and there was a lot of doubt. There was questions, was this the end of my career? Would I, if I could get back, would I even be able to get to the games? And would I be in the position to win a gold medal? And because of that injury issue, it had lots of other impacts into my preparation throughout all of the winter and into the summer. To add probably fuel to the fire, about a month or two out, there was a couple of new athletes. One of them was this Algerian guy who came second, who had run quicker than me, and at my best, his best times were similar. So he had been at a very, very good level as well. And he on paper had actually was favorite over me. He was, but nobody else had known of him. He kind of came out of nowhere. The media didn't know of him. Everybody thought Jason Smyth was going to win. I kept my injuries under wraps, so nobody knew about that. So there's this pressure that everybody thought Jason was going to win. People were unaware of these other athletes, and I was, I'd say, underprepared for where I wanted to be. So when you kind of put that bubbling away in the background, to then come out and to win that 100 meters, and I won it by 100th of a second, so it was centimeters. But I found something in that race, and maybe it's mentally, I would say there's a huge part of this piece of, I think, influence and help from upstairs, as sometimes I put it, and how I dealt with the situation in the weeks leading up to it. But the ability to do it under those circumstances and under that pressure, for me, it's just something I look back at and think, how did that happen? It was just one of those moments, and the team around me, we all kind of look back and think, how did that happen? You know, things were that to the wire. A week earlier, I wouldn't have even won. So it was just, I don't know, as I say, I had to go somewhere I'd never been before, and to be able to do it when it mattered was just unbelievable.
Thank God. That's amazing. And we were sort of laughing before with this notion that you're retired because you're still working in many different ways and so on. I think retirement, as people seem to suggest, brings out a period of transition. And you have to adjust to different things, and there will be new challenges and all, I'm sure. But I think, how has preparing for this new chapter of your life gone so far? And do you have any plans to remain involved in the Paralympic community and so on? What might the next chapter look like?
Yeah, so I mean, you're certainly right. It is a big change. When you spent 18 years since I left secondary school being an athlete to then stepping into a completely different environment. I've nearly said to somebody, it's like when people tell you sometimes, when you're about to have a kid, that things will be different, and you kind of go, yeah, things will be different, yeah. And it's not till you're going through it that you realize, yeah, it is different, and there is an adjustment. So I definitely feel that. I've been last end of March is when I retired, so just over a couple of months. But yes, part of that weighing up, would I retire? What's the right decision to make? Part of that was what is the next step? And that actually played a big part in why I decided then was the time to retire. There was the opportunity to come on board at Paralympics Ireland. So to answer your question, yes, I'm still very much involved, and involved in a role as strategy managers, where we looking to go over these next number of years in the future, and how can I support the organization in doing that. So like for me, it was an exciting opportunity to get involved in, a part of, I suppose, an area that I have had a lot of experience in sport, and the different dynamics and the different moving parts, and to be able to help bring that from probably a very different perspective than most people in the organization, as an athlete and somebody who'd been through it. Just felt like, the timing is right to make that move. Doesn't necessarily make it easier, but I think being able to make that choice for myself certainly made that easier, because you see in sport very often that it just kind of is forced upon athletes, because it's easier to stay too long, or think I've got more, and it can be certainly quite a difficult piece to get right.
Mm. Excellent. And you've hinted at it there a little bit, but I'm curious, in addition to your athletic accomplishments, have there been any moments or initiatives off the field that have been particularly meaningful to you? You sort of suggested becoming a parent, for example. Would you like to speak to that a little bit, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly is a shift and change of perspective. I think that's probably, well, two things, that, and the other piece that comes to mind is love. I remember so my oldest is 7, Evie. So I have two girls. When she first arrived and you're in the hospital, that feeling of love is something I have, I suppose, only a parent's love, but it's something I had never experienced and never fully grasped, is how you can feel that much love for something. So I think that certainly maybe softened my heart as well a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'll probably continue to do that. But I think that is one piece, and a responsibility, and there's somebody there that relies on you, trusts on you, that you're accountable for and how they grow and develop. But as I say, the other piece is that perspective, and that perspective is really what's important in life. And when my wife and I talk about this a lot, is the life of an athlete is very selfish, and it has to be at that level, because every choice you make reflects on your ability to train at a high enough quality and then compete. And having or becoming a parent certainly shifts that perspective of actually what is important in life. And yes, as important as sport felt, there was more important things in life, and I think that also probably helps in. I think it helps probably keeping you grounded and just remembering there is more to life than sometimes what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have any specific tips for people who maybe do have that intense training schedule or a different intense working schedule with a lot of demands being placed on them, like as I'm sure there was on you, and how to establish good habits, so to speak, that'll allow you to get that balance between work
It's
and
yeah,
family?
it's not easy, and that is for sure. And like I look back and I don't think, even though I was trying to find some balance, my life wasn't balanced.
Mhm.
And I mean, what I found for me, and again, everybody's different in different situations and circumstances, but for me, I found I had to, let's say, sport was a priority, and family was a priority. Like a lot of other things took a back seat. Like I wouldn't say I would have had much of a social life at all. So for me, it was a bit of a realization that I only had so much capacity and time, and even within that, I'm not sure I had that time and capacity. And but it's picking what are the priorities, and sometimes that means other things have to at that time be left on the back burner. And there's no doubt when I look back, like yes, I would say trying to find more family time, but my wife took up a huge burden um in the sacrifices she had to make for me to be an athlete at that level. And it's again, it's probably more in time that I reflect on it. It's not easy, and it's not easy for those people around you. Um and they're obviously never in the position of getting the glory or the success for what happens as well. So it's I don't know if I have answers to that question, but I think it's what are the priorities, and trying to make sure those are the pieces that you have time for, and letting other things slip even though maybe you mightn't want to.
Wonderful, thank you, Jason. And so since I started this channel, I've been blown away by the response I've got from people that I reach out to. I've been surprised that people are so open to conversation and so on. And it brings me to the Bible verse about ask and you shall receive, knock and the door will be open. And that comes to my mind constantly. Now, I'm just wondering, from your perspective, are there any Bible verses, say, or passages that have particularly resonated with you and inspire you to excel as an athlete, as a father, and so on?
I think again, I'm wouldn't say I'm the best for remembering specific passages,
No, me neither.
or where you find them. Um, but for me, there is, I can't remember where it is. I think maybe in Corinthians or somewhere, is something around challenges, and basically saying that we will not be challenged, or we will not, face challenges beyond what we are capable of overcoming. And I think it probably resonates a lot with me, just with being diagnosed with an eye disease at 7 or 8 and having less than 10% vision. And I think it's very easy to beat yourself up. Um, and back to my pieces around being an athlete, the doubts and the uncertainties. But the lesson for me, back to what I've said a few times, is actually the greater the challenge I face, knowing that I can overcome any challenge, um, the greater that actually must mean I am, as in the strength that I have to overcome it. And I think for me, that's really shifted the way I've looked at the things I face, knowing that the greater the challenge, the greater the opportunity, rather than looking at the negative and the setback.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you, Jason. And just, I suppose, to remind some of my viewers and listeners, the work that you're doing now, where can they keep abreast of that?
Again, I'm sometimes on social media. I would say I'm always active on social media. Probably Twitter is where I'm on the most. Probably find me if you just, I think it's at Smyth, SMYTH _Jason. That's probably the best place, or my website, jasonsmyth.ie. So yeah, it's probably the best places to keep in contact. And I suppose people want to reach out or connect. I'm always open to doing so and asking questions. So yeah, it's probably the best places.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today, Jason.
Pleasure.
God bless
Thanks for having me.
I'm going there. Nobody can stop me. Ooh, I'm going there.